Hello my friends, how are you doing? Here's a little online course to help you get a better photographer in no time. The reason for that is that besides all the tutorials and the cool things I create for you with the effects and the LUTs and the macros and all these kind of things, they don't really mean anything if the picture isn't good to start with. So you should always try to take the best picture possible. And you will be surprised how easy it is to take great photographs. Now, one thing I want to tell you before we get started, keep the number 3 in mind because it is very important for photography. Here is the first 3 that we need to think about. For most kinds of photography during the day, there are only 3 times a day when you can take amazing pictures. That is in the morning with the sunrise, that is in the evening when the sun sets, where you also have the golden hour and the blue hour, and that is during the day when it is overcast, which means when there is a cloudy sky. The reason for that is that the cloudy sky gives us a soft light without harsh shadows, and the morning and the evening gives us beautiful colors, soft lights, dramatic light situations that look beautiful. Let's look at some examples here. For example, here we have an overcast situation. You can see that also when there is clouds in the sky, it looks dramatic, it looks impressive. Fog is also very nice, can look very dramatic. So this is nice, and you can see the picture at the same time looks very soft and interesting. Next one is this. You can see on the ground there are no harsh shadows. So this is either photographed in the morning or in the evening. I don't think it's overcast because we can see the sky, but you have this nice blue light. Maybe this was photographed during the blue hour. So everything is nice and soft to look at. Next one here, sunset. Of course, we know these beautiful sunset colors you can find. So this, of course, is a super good situation during the day. Here we have another picture. Again, if you look at the shadows are very soft around the objects. No harsh shadows, no harsh shadow outlines. Here is another one. Here we have harsh shadow outlines, but the difference here is if you are forced to photograph in a situation where you have this harsh light, try to have as little contrast in the image as possible. So if you have something where you have a very dark shadow and a very bright wall on the other side, not really gonna work because it's just too far apart. This will destroy your picture. But here, where you have a very soft flow between the values, that is okay because you still keep everything smooth and together and not on the extreme values. You can work with that. All right. Here's another one. As you can see, harsh shadows, harsh shadow outlines, but at the same time, all of the values are in the same kind of area. So there is not an extreme shadow, there is not an extreme highlight there. Of course, you can also help this by, for example, in this situation, trying to underexpose your picture a little bit because it is easier to save shadows than it is to save highlights or overexposed situation where mostly you don't find any kind of picture information in there, while in shadows you often find at least a little bit. But of course, you shouldn't super underexposed shadows so that it's just black. So you can also turn on in your camera your helping tools that will show you if certain areas are overexposed or underexposed. That is really helpful, especially with modern cameras. Okay, here's another example. You can see here we have a very dark shadow here that's also a little bit harsher. And of course, already we see that we have some problems. It's still a cool photo. It's still a very nice picture, but the shadows are very dark. We lose all the details down here. Here is another one. You can see during harsh daylight, and it just doesn't feel as good. Think about the same picture in a situation where it is overcast or sunrise or sunset. Well, that would look a lot better than this picture here, which is just very harsh. You almost want to put on sunglasses to look at this picture. And here's another one with a harsh shadow in the background. This is studio light, but again, harsh shadow just doesn't look good. You want to have very soft shadows on all of your pictures. Of course, you can use it as a style element, but I would rather first try to get really good pictures and then introduce style than trying to be stylish too soon. Okay, let's look at the next thing we have to think about. So, for example, if we look at this picture, this is a good example. There is the second 3. In most of your pictures, if possible, you want to have 3 layers. That is, you want to have something in the foreground, you want to have something in the midground, and then you also want to have something in the background, because this stretches out your landscape. It gives you more room. It is more interesting to the eye, and it puts more story into your picture. So always try to have a little bit of something in the foreground. Here we have this grass. Maybe you could also count these 2 backpackers as foreground. Then we have the midground here with the tree and a little bit of hills here. And then we have in the background these clouds and the landscape. So we have these 3 layers, and the picture just looks more dynamic. It looks just more interesting. There is more for our brain, for our eyes to discover, to look at. It's more pleasing. All right. So another 3 is the rule of thirds, of course, in the picture. You can turn that on in your camera where you have these thirds grid. You don't have to always go for the thirds, but turning on that grid in your camera will help you decide where to put things, how to angle the camera, and of course, it will keep you away from always centering things in your picture. So try to put elements, try to put the most element, like the main character, a little bit off center. For example, again with this picture here, if we look at the backpackers, they are a little bit to the left, and this makes the picture more dynamic. It makes it less static. It makes it more interesting. It gives us a certain kind of motion that drives away from the center, because if it's completely in the center, it looks very static. It doesn't move anymore. So if it's a little bit off center, it starts to move, it starts to accelerate, it brings dynamic into the picture. The picture just looks more interesting to look at. Okay, another rule we want to think about are the 3 angles. And this is also important, because this is what I see in a lot of photos, that of course, you just take the camera and you take a picture of something you see that is cool, because this is how we look with our eyes, and then we want to take a picture that kind of resembles what we saw there. But the problem is, in most cases, that doesn't really look very interesting. So there is 3 easy changes that you can introduce. You can either go lower than your subject, or higher than your subject, or a little bit to the side, either side of your subject. So you have it a little bit on an angle. It's not dead on and dead center in the picture, because this takes all of the dynamic out of it. Let's try to see this example. As you can see, this is looking up. Of course, it's a tall building, but still, it's not just head on. It's a dynamic angle, a little bit from the lower point up. It's not just photographing it from far away head on, and you can see how dynamic the picture is for that reason. Also, by the way, wide angle photography is often a lot easier, because it's just more interesting. You get more interesting stuff into your picture. So as a beginner, maybe try that. Try wide angles and then go more zoomed over time. I find wide angle a lot easier. Here we have something that is actually kind of head on, but at the same time you can see that the horizon is in the lower third, so it's not just in the middle, which is also important. And the camera isn't just pointing down, it is still finding an interesting angle here. Let's have a look at this one. This is pointing downwards from the upper position, so not just photographing it, also framing it very nicely. You can also see here a little bit of these kind of thirds that are used when you put the lines in here. So that is a very nice composition here. Again, here, this is like completely top down, interesting composition, but you have to have a drone for that. In this one, well, also pointing down. Now, if you look at this picture here, you can see that the van is crammed into the picture. There is no space left or right to move. The van is photographed head on with no angle, and at the same time it's dead center in the picture, which in this case can't be any other way because it's completely filling the frame. So you have no way to go with your mind. Now, think about if this picture was taken a little bit off center, a little bit from the side, a little bit more distant, how more dynamic, how more interesting it could have been. Here's a comparison to another picture, and you can see here that the van is photographed a little bit from the side, so we see a little bit of the front, and it is a little bit off center to the right. We have more room around it, and it's not this kind of harsh daylight, it's more like a soft overcast light. And you can see how much nicer this picture looks, how more dynamic the picture looks, you know? So you see how easy it is. Just move a little bit, go a little bit higher, go a little bit lower, look at what the daytime is, stuff like that. And with the app, that's a good thing. You can plan something. So of course I understand you can't always be at the right time, at the right spot to take the amazing picture. But what you can do is to make a note of the location, then look at your photo app to see what's the best time of day to take the picture, and then come back later to take the picture in the evening or in the next morning, stuff like that. And of course, as a photographer, you kind of have to be an early riser because sunrise often is very early. So if you want to get these amazing sunrise pictures, well, yeah, that's what you have to do. Or you just take sundown pictures, which means you can basically sleep all day and then just get up and take some amazing pictures. Okay, I hope this helped you to improve your photography. I'm looking forward to your results in my Facebook group, and thank you for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.